Hey ladies. I should say ladies and gentlemen. It's really interesting because I'm starting to get a few male followers as well, which I'm all about because really everything that I talk about applies. And then the stuff that I talk about that doesn't apply applies anyways because it's so important for men to understand women's bodies. So I should say hi ladies and the few gentlemen that are here at Just Cash Wellness. But I'm so excited for this live. I'm sorry that it wasn't yesterday. I had there's a lot of things going on right now business wise, so you get your taxes done and all these things, and so I had to have an appointment with my accountant whose office is kind of far away. So it was kind of a long day of driving for me yesterday, and I was like, you know what? I want to have a day to refresh before I go live because I actually love to enjoy this time with you guys, and I don't want to feel like, I'm exhausted. But yeah, throw those questions at me. I thought I would share something interesting. So, from day to day, there are times when I'm kind of not in the mood to learn about anything wellness related. Yes, even me. Sometimes it can be a lot, so you learn, you go through periods where you're learning, and then you're just kind of no. And during those times I'll listen to true crime, or I'll listen to something that has nothing to do with wellness, or I'll watch stuff that has nothing to do with wellness until I'm kind of my desire is spurred again, and then I'll see something or someone will post something and it just drives me to want to dig into that a ton. But yesterday I listened to a podcast during my drive that was Matt Blackburn's My to Life podcast with Ben Belty, and it was such an amazing podcast. I'm still just on that information high. I learned so much from his podcast. Those are my favorite podcast, but sometimes I have to listen to one and just think about all the information I learned. But it's so Ben Belty is really interesting because he has a wild rice company, and he talked about wild rice in the podcast, and it's such an amazing carbohydrate. So I actually ordered some from his company, and I'm excited to share my experience with it. So I'm gonna tell you guys how it goes. I just ordered it today, and so I'm gonna try it and see how I like it, and tell you guys all the interesting stuff that I learn about it. Suggestions for mid to end period breakouts: no acne leading up to period, very little nuts, no seeds, yes to carrots, root vegetables, OJ, guava, probiotics, collagen in my spearmint, and raspberry tea. Oh yeah, so mid to end of period breakout. So that's usually around the time where estrogen starts to climb, which is really interesting. Because you're doing all of the detox things, I'm wondering how your protein intake is. I know you're doing collagen, but are you getting a good, consistent 100 grams of protein a day? That would be my first question for you. My second question would be, how are you doing balancing blood sugar during your cycle and your period? Remember, your period's a very depleting time, more than any other part of your cycle, because you're shedding a lot of toxic metals and things like that, but you're also shedding a lot of nutrients and minerals, right? Your blood, and your body's having to replenish that blood. And so think about nourishment and think about, am I actually increasing my fuel to meet those demands that are being placed upon my body? A lot of women get kind of nauseous during their period, or they tend to not eat as much because they don't feel as good, but in reality that is actually the opposite of what we should be doing. We should be really making sure we're even just doing small snacks throughout the day. If you don't have much of an appetite, making sure you are very much nourishing yourself and keeping that blood sugar manually balanced. Make sure you're doing those two things and then get back to me, because you're doing so many other things. I really do wonder what could be going on. But that is when estrogen does tend to start to rise. So I'm wondering if detoxification is just impaired slightly and you're having that detoxification through the skin. Also, I don't know what supplements you're on, but if you're taking a multivitamin or something with iron, that's something to kind of consider as a problem, as iron is the thing that usually comes through the skin and feeds that bacteria. Do you think progesterone cream is better than the pill? They're completely different things. So the pill shuts down our cycle, right? Stops our body's ability to produce its own progesterone. When we stop ovulating, we stop making progesterone. And the pill is going to deplete us of specific nutrients needed to ovulate. So vitamin C, vitamin E, B vitamins, iodine, zinc are some particular, selenium. And those are, interestingly enough, also thyroid supportive nutrients. So just make sure you guys do your research on the pill. It does make us more susceptible to metabolic disease, strokes, cardiovascular disease, because when you shut down the female cycle, there is always consequences. Whereas bioidentical progesterone is very different. It mimics your natural progesterone, and it usually has the same anti-inflammatory, pro-sleep, anti-cortisol effects, and can actually help you begin to ovulate long-term in a lot of cases. So they're very different things. They perform very different tasks. Bioidentical progesterone is just supplementing your natural progesterone. If you're already ovulating, you're already making some, and so your goal would be to make more, and sometimes progesterone can kind of be that thing that helps support that, whereas the pill just shuts down the cycle completely. No ability to make progesterone any longer. Dermatitis during period, please help. Don't want to use steroid creams. I don't know much about your case, so I don't know what could be causing it. There's a lot of things that can drive dermatitis, but oftentimes it is the liver being pretty burdened, or maybe gut health. Something's a little off with gut health. So do you do a raw carrot salad every day throughout your whole cycle, or at least a raw carrot? Remember that raw carrot fiber helps kind of keep the digestive tract fairly cleansed, and then also binds to estrogen and carries it out of the body. Do you have enough magnesium? Do you do some type of magnesium? Are you making sure you have a magnesium-rich diet? Those are some things that you could maybe consider. Detox baths are always great. So like Epsom salts, baking soda, some bentonite clay, and a really hot bath to kind of sweat it out. But yeah, those are some things that I would maybe consider. You said before that you used to have keratosis pilaris and you don't anymore. How did you get rid of it? I wasn't actively trying to get rid of KP, and it does kind of flare up when I'm under a lot more stress, or I am a little bit more inflamed, like maybe I'm not eating as well as I could be. So what really helped with KP was a plethora of things. I can't say, I could pinpoint that one thing. First, getting nuts and seeds out of my diet was, oh my gosh, a life-changing experience. And interestingly enough, there are so many DMs that I get that say thank you so much, my KP is completely gone once I ditch nuts and seeds. And I'm like, you're welcome. Same for me. So that is one thing that I noticed made a huge difference in my skin, just not really eating nuts and seeds anymore. And then also dairy, it's essential. When I implemented dairy back in, it was so amazing for me, because I think it's has to do with the vitamin A, the fat soluble vitamins. So vitamin A, but also vitamin K and vitamin D, all those are really important for skin health and the turnover of the keratin in the skin. Because really what keratosis pilaris is keratinization is taking place. The dead skin cells aren't shedding. There's a problem with the turnover of skin cells, and so vitamin A is usually or at least part of the problem when it comes to that. And then also my supplementation of aspirin did begin to help as well. So it was kind of a mixture of things, keeping my blood sugar really balanced. I stopped fasting. I stopped going a long time without eating, which helped my body definitely get inflammation down, because I wasn't opening up my fat cells and releasing free fatty acids into the bloodstream. And then, like I said, ditching nuts and seeds, and dairy, and then my supplementation of aspirin. Do you recommend a spore probiotic after antibiotic use? My digestion is trashed after just 2 days of antibiotic use for bad UTI. Yeah, so those UTI antibiotics are almost always they're just the most potent antibiotics a lot of times, and when you're on them, it definitely feels like you're wrecked. So usually it's best to wait until after you're done and kind of let your body settle. Yeah, spore-based probiotic for 60 to 90 days is a good idea, just because it's so gentle. It is a good idea to kind of wait for everything to settle though after an antibiotic. I know it can be let's just pound probiotics, but remember what antibiotics do, you guys. And the reason why there's such a conflicting views on them is they do something what I like to call create space. And so a lot of times they're going to wipe about 1/3 of your microbiome, both good and bad, out. That's why they're so effective at getting rid of the bacteria that are driving issues. But when you wipe 1/3 of bacteria, it's not just that stuff's gone, right? What happens is you have created space, and now there's a lot of opportunistic bacteria. All bacteria is opportunistic, is now trying to take up that space. And whoever is stronger, whoever is getting fed, is going to be the one that takes up that space. And you can have, a month after an antibiotic, you can have a completely different microbiome than you did before, because now all of the bacteria and funguses and pathogens that remained are taking up the space, and they're kind of like on a mission to be the one that takes up the most space. And so I think that a good idea is to do things like cranberry, like actually buy some fresh cranberries and make some cranberry sauce like you would on Thanksgiving, to kind of keep bacteria like slowly growing back rather than just like rapidly growing back, and having like a few spoonfuls of cranberry sauce every day. You can also buy it in a can. It's not as optimal, but it still works really, really well. Or doing like a little bit of cranberry juice or cranberry concentrate every day. Continue to do the raw carrot salad. Just kind of your goal is to keep the small intestine pretty clear of bacteria, all the while implementing prebiotics. So remember, root vegetables, fruits, things like wild rice, and other like really well like sprouted grain products in small amounts, not going crazy with them, can actually be amazing prebiotics to feed the right strains of bacteria. And then you want to stay away from things that are going to add tons of bulk, that are going to like ferment and kind of rot and really feed excessive amounts of bacteria. So, you would want to do like some cooked greens for prebiotics, like really making sure you're focusing on the prebiotics, because what you're feeding your body is going to determine what bacteria is going to grow. And then after you've kind of like done that for a couple weeks, that would be the time to implement like a spore-based probiotic. Low blood pressure first days of period suggestions. Salt, sugar. Most women have higher needs for salt and sugar on like the last day of their cycle or right before they start their period. And so adding a lot of high quality sea salt to your food oftentimes helps you feel that, because what's happening is your blood pressure is low because of those solvent minerals being low. Potassium and sodium are those solvent minerals. They help regulate blood pressure. And when you are in need of sodium, you'll find your blood pressure low. But like I said, that's going to go hand in hand with keeping your blood sugar balanced. Because if you're not keeping blood sugar balanced, you also don't have enough salt, then that's going to equal some stress and low blood pressure. Is it safe to use crystal deodorant? Does it contain a different type of aluminum, though? So the aluminum salts in a crystal deodorant rock are very large on a molecular size, so they don't tend to absorb as much as, say, like the synthetic aluminum that's manufactured for things like Dove deodorant, or whatever conventional deodorant. So personally, I don't have a problem with it. I kind of did my research. Like, there's so many fear mongers that are like, it's still aluminum. And I'm like, well, it's actually natural aluminum. It's not synthetic aluminum. It's not manufactured aluminum. And it is on a large molecular scale. But if you are still kind of like, I don't like that, a really easy deodorant is milk of magnesia in a roller bottle. You can buy like a cheap roller bottle on Amazon and fill it with milk of magnesia and roll that on, and that acts as an excellent, natural, easy deodorant. How many ginger teas a day do you think might be too much? I don't think, personally, there are times when I'm like obsessed with it and I drink it like 3 or 4 times a day. Not saying that that's like optimal. Ginger can be have a blood thinning effect, so that's something to kind of keep in mind. But overall, I don't think there's like a max, unless you're having like really potent, concentrated ginger tea that's like really gonna knock you out cold, Been working with a functional doctor and hormones so much better, skin better, 4 cycles in a row, estrogen down, liver enzymes better, but weight gain won't budge. Any thoughts? PCOS and TSH is a 3. Are you on a low carb diet? That would be something that I would be looked at. How's your protein intake? Are you getting 100 grams of bioavailable animal proteins a day? How's your gut health? Are you eating foods that are kind of constantly irritating your gut? And when I say that, a lot of people are like, oh no, like I'm on an anti-inflammatory diet. And I mean like nuts and seeds, tons of nuts and seeds, tons of raw vegetables, especially raw greens, tons of cruciferous vegetables. All of those are going to slow down the metabolism for sure. So lots of your goal is lots of bioavailable nutrient dense foods like fruits and roots for carbohydrates, making sure you're getting plenty of good carbs, lots and lots of protein from things like eggs and dairy and fish and shellfish, and ruminant animals like grass-fed beef and bison, broths, collagen, gelatin. Those gelatinous foods are really, really important. And then, remember, evaluate your supplements. If you're on iron or fish oil, those are two things that are going to, I know they're very popular in the functional health and wellness field, but I highly recommend doing more research on them, because they can both really slow down the metabolism and cause more insulin issues and weight loss problems. So those would be kind of my tips. I don't really know exactly what's going on with you. I can't see your Dutch test. I don't know what's going on with your hormones. So those would be kind of like guesses or speculation. What brand of magnesium glycinate do you use and recommend? It kind of depends on a client's budget, or just kind of like the overall, like how many supplements are they on. But I usually like pure encapsulations. Magnesium glycinate is pretty good. I'm trying to think. Corganic. So there's a website called Corganic, and they have a really good magnesium glycinate. It's called like Goodnight Maggie, I think. I'm trying to think of another glycinate that I like. Yeah, I usually use Pure Encapsulations or Goodnight Maggie. That would be like my two favorites. There's other magnesium glycinates out there, like Innovix Labs is really very clean and very inexpensive, and they tend to do a pretty good job. And then if you're really on a tight budget, bulk supplements is always a great place. They are of Chinese origin, so their quality is hard to kind of pinpoint, but people tend to like them for an inexpensive option. Can you cure yourself of endometriosis? After I had my children, who are now almost 5 now, I'm always afraid it will come back and I'll have those terrible cramps, but I'm also more mindful of food. I don't really necessarily use the word cure. When it comes to endometriosis, a lot of the problem is gut issues and estrogen dominance. And once you have children, you go through for 9 months with all this progesterone, which tends to help with estrogen. So if progesterone levels get low again, or if gut health gets out of control, which it sounds like you're being more mindful of food, I guess it's possible, but many times it doesn't come back once women have children. So it just kind of depends on the habits. It depends on, progesterone levels, hormone levels, individual hormone levels. But I mean, I wouldn't say like the word cure. I would say it's more just like reversal of symptoms, or hormonal shifts have occurred which have helped with those symptoms. What does it mean when my temps are in the range they should be, but my heart rate is low? Like right now, after dinner temp is 99, but pulse is 53, and in the morning, pulse is 55 to 60. Well, if pulses tend to be low, and temps tend to be high, that could be a sign of that there's continual stress. Stress is going to continue over time, and you have to continue to work on your metabolism. My question for you would be, have your temps raised over time? Have they gotten to a point where they are, gradually increasing throughout the day and improving? Were they lower before? Those would be questions. If they have always been that high, then I would assume there's some stress at play. But if you've really worked on them and you've gotten them higher, then it might take some time to get pulses a little higher. If you continually have low pulses, I would evaluate like CO2 levels. So are you deep breathing throughout the day? Or are you kind of like hyperventilating, like you're not taking really deep belly breaths or getting enough oxygen? Some other things I would evaluate are like light. Are you getting enough of good light? How are your minerals, magnesium levels, sodium and potassium levels? Those are all really important. And then also are you strength training? Like, is that something that your body could handle right now? So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't worry too much about it. The goal would be to get you to a point where your pulses are higher. But sometimes if you're going looking at your whole picture, a lot of times what happened is you were under stress and you finally got your temps to a point where you've got your stress hormones down, and now it's a slow climb up. Getting your temps up and getting your pulses up takes time. It's not just going to be like an instantaneous thing. But yeah, the goal is to usually the temps start to change first before the pulses do. What are some reasons people get cold sores? Any tips on preventing them? A lot of times the immune system is up and down, so a lot of people who have like cold sores pop up, they're usually really stressed out during that time, or their immune system is down. A lot of times people will get them while they're getting sick. But L-lysine tends to help really well, as does something called monolaurin or lauricidin. Monolaurin pellets can be really, really helpful for any type of virus or viral like issues, as is L-lysine. So those are kind of my two favorites for if a cold sore ever pops up. But over time, as I've gotten my metabolism a lot healthier and I've supported my health, I used to get cold sores all the time now that I think about it, but I haven't gotten one in years. So no dairy to help get rid of KP, or dairy is good for KP? Sorry. Yeah, when I tied in dairy for KP, it ended up really helping my KP. Started taking Vitex and drinking raspberry leaf tea to regulate period, which is helping, but I noticed increased breast soreness. Is this normal due to hormones regulating? It's possible. When you start to raise progesterone, you do start to mobilize estrogen, which is usually the driving factor of breast soreness. So that would be something to maybe consider. The goal would be to have it pop up for a period of time as you're moving it, but then over time have it completely improve or get better. Have your cycle regulate, but also have the breast soreness go away. So the way that you know something is improving is that each cycle gets a little better until it's gone. Whereas if something just continues to linger and it doesn't get any better, it doesn't get any worse, like no changes occur, then usually something needs to shift, if that makes sense. Tips for getting in more selenium, supplement versus food. It just really depends on levels. If your selenium is super, super low, then it can be really hard to get it up naturally. Brazil nuts can be a way to get it up, 1 or 2 a day. You just want to make sure your Brazil nuts are fresh. So anytime you do nuts, you want to make sure they're fresh, meaning that they actually come in the shell and you have to crack them out of the shell. That shell actually protects the nut from going rancid and having the fats in there actually become very inflammatory. And so the reason why I always talk about nuts and seeds being pretty inflammatory and pretty stress-inducing and estrogenic, is because all of the nuts and seeds that we consume today, like they're literally sitting on the Whole Foods shelf for like 8 months, like going rancid in a bag. They've already been roasted in some nasty oil, and they're just sitting there exposed to oxygen and light and heat. Very rarely are we buying nuts whole and cracking them with a nut cracker and having a few. And so if you need selenium and you want a food-based form of it, you want to get some whole Brazil nuts that you actually have to crack and open up, and just doing 1 or 2 a day can be a good source of selenium. Also, shellfish and whitefish are great sources of selenium as well, or all those trace minerals. If you're having, at that point, if you know you're really low in selenium and you're having a hard time getting it up, sometimes if Brazil nuts and shellfish is not enough, you do have to supplement it, and it does end up helping to kind of like throw in a supplement a couple times a week. Any good remedies for colds? Personally, for me, my mains are going to be like hydration, so coconut, anything that's mineral rich. So coconut water, bone broth, and I do like lots of hot teas. That's going to be like always drinking something hot, something warm, maybe like a ginger lemon honey tea. I do tons of honey. So there's these amazing little cough drops made of manuka honey and ginger and echinacea. They're called literally like Manuka. I think that's the brand. It's like Manuka honey, ginger, echinacea. I'm literally sucking on those like constantly. I literally always have one in my mouth. And then I actually will cut up a garlic clove into chunks that I can swallow, and I will just literally swallow the garlic clove in chunks, raw, whole, like a supplement. I just swallow it. I also always have oregano on hand during cold season, because oregano for me, I can take a few drops in the evening and by the morning I'm feeling right as rain. So those are kind of my tips. If I'm like starting to really feel like it's just coming on quick, I will hop in a bath with tons of Epsom salts, tons of baking soda, and a big 1 liter bottle of coconut water, and I literally just sit in like the hottest bath I can stand, sweating out whatever junk is there, and just like chugging coconut water. And usually that does the trick. So this girl cannot get sick. I'm always like, I can't get sick because I can't, but my body sometimes is like, but you're not resting, you're not taking care of me, you're not, you're staying up too late, you're not sleeping 8 hours. And so sometimes I have to let my body kind of succumb because it's my forced slow down. So sometimes my body's just going to do what it's going to do. And I usually come out on the other side of a sickness stronger. But I will do all of those things that I just mentioned before I let myself just succumb to it. Isn't goat milk high in selenium? It can be, depending on what those goats are consuming. Remember, most of, when it comes to milk and it comes to meat, really what the animal's consuming is going to determine the nutrient density of the byproducts. And it can definitely be high in selenium. I started incorporating more fruit and I'm so hungry. Like I need to eat all the time. Should I eat more fat? I would eat more fat, but I would just try more starch. Some people do better with like things like potatoes, and they tend to do better with like starchier foods, and they don't need as much fruit, or because during the winter they're eating lots of, are you making sure you're eating seasonal fruit? Because right now it's very hard to get seasonal fruit. And so if you're eating a lot of unripe fruit or fruit that's not in season, that could be the problem. It's not as nutrient dense as it would be when it's ripe and in season. And so you're not getting as many nutrients as you would. And so your body's hungry for more. So in the winter, maybe try more starches and see how your body does. If vitamin D is low, is it okay to supplement D3 with K2? Recommended by my doctor today. If vitamin D is low, you guys, you have a severe magnesium deficiency, most likely boron issues, maybe potassium issues, lithium issues. It's a decline over time. So we get all these mineral imbalances to eventually our body will lower vitamin D. But I think it's kind of important to go on a case-by-case basis. If you really truly can't get any sunlight, then supplementing a little bit is usually okay, depending on calcium levels. But if somebody has really high calcium and they supplement vitamin D, they'll find that they are getting more like calcification. Their muscles get like really tight and kind of sore. They're having a hard time contracting and relaxing. And like even in more severe cases can get like things like tonsil stones and gallstones and things like that. So it's really important to understand that vitamin D being low is usually a symptom of a way bigger problem. Usually having to do with magnesium deficiency. But I think that's really up to the individual person and the individual case. Do you use a shower filter? Yeah, I do. I use like a charcoal reverse osmosis filter. I used one that I got at Costco for like literally years. I think it was like Han brand, HAHN, just because it was like at Costco and I could grab it for $50. And then like about a year ago, that one kind of like went kaput, and I bought an Aquasana reverse osmosis charcoal filter. It's like, I don't think it's reverse osmosis. I think it's just like a charcoal filter. But yeah, I do use a shower filter. Mostly because a lot of people are like, oh, it's like the chlorine, and like, yeah, there is a lot of chlorine and fluoride and other pharmaceutical runoff in the water. But the biggest thing is when chlorine turns into steam, it actually goes through a chemical reaction and becomes something called chloramine. And when you breathe that steam in with chlorine, chloramines are actually much more powerful, and they can displace a lot of iodine in the body. And so I don't think it's the first thing we should be worried about. I don't think it's the first thing we should spend our money on or invest in. But just having in the back of our mind to eventually invest into a shower filter is probably a good idea. I really like the liquid multi from Fully Nourished. Woohoo! Yeah, it's really nutrient dense and wonderful. Can I drink more than the recommended amount? LOL. Or is there a limit to how much to drink per day? I think you should just kind of pay attention. If you're drinking more, I don't see a problem with that. It's really just like almost like a concentrated tea. Maybe dilute it a little bit. If you're really letting it like steep for a long time, I would maybe dilute it with some more water just to almost treat it like a concentrate, or maybe put some ice in it and let the ice kind of melt. But yeah, I don't see a problem. The only thing that you would want to pay attention to is like if you're feeling a little bit on the drier side, or if you see any like hormonal symptoms pop up. But I don't see why. It's very simple. Like oat straw, nettle, and red raspberry are all very supportive and fairly gentle, which is why I use them. Since I'm breastfeeding, I have not gotten my period back yet, and I'm 9 months postpartum. Should I be using some sort of progesterone? I think that's kind of a question for your doctor and just something to kind of consider. I don't think you should be using some type of progesterone. It's really very common to not get your period back while you're breastfeeding. And so for me, like the natural order of things, I would just probably, if it were me personally, I would just let it be. And usually you go back to ovulating when your body's ready. And that's kind of like how it is. But if you're experiencing a lot of low progesterone symptoms, maybe postpartum depression, then at that point, something like progesterone would be so much better than suffering in silence. So all about context. Do you know anything about milia? All I can find is that it's from not exfoliating, but I know that's not the case for me. It's only on one side of my face. Thoughts on internal causes? Is it on the left side of the face, like the side of the face that is going to be exposed to the sun while you're driving? I mean, I don't know where you're at, but I'm assuming the US would be the left side, or in other countries it would be the right side. So I think that would depend. But if it's sun exposure, what types of fats are coming out of your cells? First of all, what types of fats are you eating on a regular basis? I talk a lot about PUFAs being very damaging here. If you haven't seen that highlight story yet, I highly recommend watching my story highlight labeled fats. But if you've already seen that, you're like, I know I don't really eat very many polyunsaturated fats, don't eat a lot of PUFAs, then maybe they're still in your tissues and your fat cells, and it's oxidizing. There's oxidation occurring when there's exposure to light and heat. So things like vitamin E can be really helpful for that. Shilajit is something that helps really bind to iron, which can help with the oxidation of PUFAs, kind of can lower that from happening. But yeah, honestly, when it comes to milia, it's kind of like a trial and error type of thing. Like, is it sun exposure? Is it something diet-wise internally that's happening? Is it hormonal? Because those are all valid reasons why skin issues can occur. Is it normal with increase of calorie intake for fat around hips, thighs to go down, but then move to front of stomach? Will this go down eventually? It can be, but it can also be a little bit too much too soon. So if you increase your calories too fast, and your body doesn't have anything to do with it, like it's not burning that energy, it will store that energy. And then also, if you're kind of just increasing carbohydrates, but you're not increasing protein or making sure you're getting enough protein, that could also be something to kind of consider. It is normal for fat to kind of shift around. Like, girls in Fully Nourished have all types of stories of they kind of like lost weight in their waist, and then their hips got bigger, and their breasts got bigger, or just fat distribution has changed dramatically since implementing more calories and different styles of eating. But I wouldn't necessarily say it's normal for hips and thighs to go down and then move to the front of the stomach. Hips and thighs is usually like an estrogen-based storage, whereas stomach is going to be either like a stress-based storage or like an insulin-related storage. So those are just things to consider. Like, have carbs gone up too fast? Are you weight training? Are you eating enough protein? Those are things I would consider. I wouldn't say it's not normal, and I wouldn't say it's normal, because I really don't know. Like, I don't know your habits. I just think it's kind of one of those things where it could be normal for you, and that is possible. Would coffee be with collagen, half and half, and a little sugar be okay first thing in the morning? If it's after breakfast, yes. You guys know I do not recommend drinking coffee regardless of what's in it until you've eaten breakfast. Mostly just because most of us can't handle it. And our blood sugar is already really messed up right when we wake up. And so adding caffeine to that is just another issue. Is 9.9 nanograms per milliliter progesterone with blood test day 21 considered normal in the functional medicine field? Also, not really sure what's considered low. Thanks. Yeah, usually anything above 8 is optimal. So 9.9, pretty good to me. New to raw dairy, started drinking it in high quantity, but now I'm having problems digesting it. How can I mitigate this? Because I want to receive the benefits. Sometimes when we go too much too fast, we can definitely it's not creating a problem, it's just our body has not had time to adjust. So I would go down to as much as you can tolerate and then slowly work up over time. I know it can be like, oh, it's something so good for me, I'm going to just chug it I'm just going to use a lot of it. But what can happen is if our body's not digesting it well, then we're not receiving those benefits anyway. So slowly increase over time. Also, what types of dairy are you consuming? Is it just milk, or are you doing like a mixture of milks and cheeses and things like that? If you're doing cheeses, that can also be bothersome. I usually recommend like start with milk first, and then once you're okay with milk, then move on to products made from milk, because cheese is made from milk, ice cream's made from milk. You know, people start to manipulate milk and make all these wonderful dairy products, which is excellent, but if you can't digest milk, then you can't digest the rest. So start with milk, and usually you want to intake it as much as you can tolerate, and then you would increase that over time as you are able to digest it more and more. But I wouldn't stress about it. It's just sometimes we go too fast, too hard, too soon, which is very much a human nature, but it's important to kind of give our body time to adjust. What are you doing for Valentine's Day? I hope you have a good day. You know, I don't really have any plans. I'm taking my grandma out to lunch tomorrow, so that will be fun for her. But yeah, I'm not like really doing anything crazy. My boyfriend owns his own business, and so he might have to work late. And I'm not like a Valentine's type of gal, so I'll kind of see what he's up to. But we don't really have any plans. We might do something on like Saturday or a different time. To celebrate, you know, we always are good about celebrating each other. So, but yeah, I don't really have many plans. I know I'm like boring. Hey Jess, hope you're having a great week. Can you share the benefits of oregano? Yeah, I hope you're having a great week too, Rachel. So oregano is is a concentrated extract from oregano. So a lot of us have heard of oil of oregano, but it's a concentrated extract called P73. And the oil of oregano that they use is wild oregano. I believe it's from Italy, but don't quote me on that. You can find a lot more website or information on their website, but it's wild oregano. And wild plants are so much more potent and nutrient dense than cultivated plants. And a lot of oregano now is cultivated, and they're not using rich soil, they're not growing it in the right climate, and so oregano is far superior, and that's why the dosage is like 2 drops. It's very low because you don't need a lot to make a lot of difference. So I really love oregano, and I use it for all types of issues. So I always have it on hand for things like colds. I'm always like going to take a few drops if I'm feeling a little scratchy, but it's also incredible for gut issues. You know, if you feel like you have small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, it's so powerful for SIBO or any type of like digestive issues, digestive distress. It can usually wipe out a lot of bacteria and pathogens fairly well. Where did you get the number of 5 times body weight for magnesium amount? So if I'm 150 pounds, it's 750 milligrams, so much higher than the suggested daily amount on the bottle. Yeah, so usually that's kind of according to the magnesium advocacy group guidelines. When you're really depleted in magnesium, there's also something called magnesium burn rate. And so a lot of times we're actually burning through magnesium much faster than we can re-implement it into the body. And so 5 times our body weight in milligrams, I know it can seem kind of like high, but a lot of us are so depleted, and we've been so depleted for so long that it takes a higher amount for us to get our levels back up, because so much of it, we're actually burning through it. That magnesium burn rate is pretty fast. So that is according to the magnesium advocacy group guidelines, and what I've pretty much noticed, like observing with clients, is pretty good. But it can take some time to get up to that dose. Like it can give you definitely some bowel distress if you just like do that all at once. But usually splitting it half in the morning and half in the evening is a good idea and a good way to go. Hi Jess, how bad is it to get your hair bleached or colored a few times a year? I wouldn't say like it's like, oh my gosh, it's so bad. It's probably not the best thing. You know, lots of hair dyes have tons of heavy metals, but I personally get my hair bleached or highlighted with bleach because I love it, and I feel better when I do it. You know, I feel better about myself, which translates over to my health and well-being. You know, when my hair is just kind of like, meh, I just feel meh, you know, so I like highlights. It makes me happy. And I kind of pick and choose what I'm exposed to toxin-wise for that very reason. I want to be able to splurge on things that make me feel really good. If they made a non-toxic bleach, non-toxic hair dye that worked, that'd be awesome, but they don't. And so until that time comes around, I am going to go for the real deal. So personally, I'm not going to say it's good for you because it's probably not, but I limit toxins in so many other ways that personally for me, the kind of splurge that it is not something I really stress about. Not sure if you saw my earlier question. I'm sorry, I don't think I did. Do you eat yellow potatoes or only russet? I do both, but I actually prefer russet. I digest them so much better. They just give me like this warm, grounded feeling, and for me, that shows me that my body really likes them, and I prefer the taste. I get bad acne, usually deep, painful, only on days 14 to 17 of my period. What can I do with diet to help this? So you would want to support estrogen detoxification. That's usually the time when estrogen is going to be at its highest. So eating a raw carrot every single day, or focusing on the raw carrot salad every single day, adding chlorophyll, or doing my detox lemonade, which is just a couple tablespoons of cranberry concentrate, juice of half a lemon, and a tablespoon of chlorophyll, organic of course. Doing magnesium oil on the liver itself can be very helpful, and then making sure you're getting plenty of sleep and plenty of protein. Is TSH, T3, and T4 tested after 12 hours of fasting accurate for finding hypo or hyperthyroidism? That's a good question, and sometimes no. It's sometimes better to get your thyroid tested in the afternoon after you have like a couple good meals in you, but you would regularly eat, not like, okay, I'm gonna try to get my thyroid numbers up, like actually doing like more of a typical day of eating. But yeah, I feel like sometimes when you're doing them fasted, they can come back low. I've actually had this experience where like I get my blood levels tested at the doctor. They're like, oh, your T3's kind of low. But then I've done like at home tests where I take them like in the early afternoon, and I'm great. Like I am almost like hyperthyroid. So to the point where like I'm realizing that if you're doing them fasting, you can sometimes get a lower result than if you're not fasted and you've gotten some food in you and some different blood sugar going on. So that's just my observations. I haven't really seen any like research that supports that, but that's kind of what I've seen. Any recommendations of any good supplements? I mean, yeah, but just kind of depending on what's going on with the person. It just kind of depends on what, depending on your own case, it's going to determine what are good supplements for you. I've never had blood pressure problems, and I measured it last night. It was super high. Could this just mean my body is stressed or I am eating red meat too often? I don't know about blood pressure and red meat, but I would say that's probably stress, especially if your pulses are also, or your temperatures are also high in the evening. Usually stress is going to be, for a lot of people who are under stress or have a lot of stress hormones or blood sugar issues, stress is going to be concentrated in the evening because you've had a whole day of your body having to run on bare minimum or maybe stress hormones. And so by the evening, it's hard to hide those stress hormones. So, I mean, I would assume stress. I don't see why red meat would cause high blood pressure. I have severe acne, but mostly only on one side of my face. I change my pillowcase often and use 7th generation detergent, so I don't think it's from that. Any ideas? That's really weird to have it. I mean, I'm not weird, but like to only have it on one side of your face. Have you tried a different non-toxic detergent like Branch Basics or something like that? Because it is weird that it is on just one side of your face. But is it the side of your face that gets exposed to the sun the most? Because that is something to consider. If the fats are oxidizing, like that could be causing some inflammation. But a lot of times acne has to do with bacteria and iron levels and having a lot of iron come out of the face. So it is weird that it's concentrated on one side. It almost makes me think that it is like some type of environmental, like you're trying to figure out. So I like vitamin E and Shilajit for acne. I think Shilajit and vitamin E are excellent supplements for acne, excellent support in addition to a raw carrot salad every single day. What kinds of consultation do you offer online? Happy Galentine's Day. Happy Galentine's Day. I've been seeing people saying that. I really love that. Right now I offer 2 coaching packages, a 6-week package and a 12-week package, and there's a ton of details online, but I'm kind of thinking of, there's a lot of demand for like consultations, just people want like an hour with me, so I might end up adding that back on in the coming future. So right now I only offer 2 packages, 6-week coaching and 12-week coaching, but I may change that as I go. Demand is always changing, and so I'm always kind of shifting for what people need and what people want. Took N-acetylcysteine and it caused a rash on my hands and hives on my thighs. Am I allergic to NAC or was this Herxing? It's possible that it's Herxing, but a lot of people, that would be like my last favorite first supplement for people. I'm not a big fan of NAC because it can really be detoxifying because it is that precursor to glutathione, which is that master antioxidant, but it's also a very good biofilm breaker. And so if you have really bad gut dysbiosis or really serious gut issues, that can really mess with you and give you some severe herx. So it's possible that was herxing, but you could also just be reacting very poorly to it. So either way, it could go either way. You have opened my eyes to so much about healing my PCOS and postpartum thyroiditis. My endo's answer to everything is prescriptions. I'm still on metformin and levothyroxine, but I'm hoping if I keep up on everything you've taught me so far, I can get off the meds. Thank you for all you do. Yeah, I hope that for you too. And sometimes it's a process, you know? Like, I'm so glad that you're learning and you're slowly implementing things, and then the body takes time, you know? And then as things shift, you begin to reevaluate. It's always a reevaluation. I know we sometimes think health is a destination, but it's simply just a journey. We're always going to be exposed to stressors and things that are going to mess with our health throughout our life in different ways. And so we just have to kind of shift accordingly. But I'm so glad that you are learning and changing. Do you believe it's possible to overcome allergies to animals? I started horse riding around 7, and by age 9, my allergic symptoms were getting bad, and by 12, I could no longer ride. That sounds really awful. You know, I think it is possible. I do know that a lot of people that have allergies have really high histamines. They have a really hard time breaking down histamine, and that usually has to do with a magnesium deficiency and a copper deficiency, and then a need for B vitamins. So I'm not saying that, like, yes, it's possible, because I'm honestly not sure, but usually if people are really that allergic to animals, they also have other allergies that they or other histamine issues or histamine symptoms, and working on magnesium and copper, vitamin C, B vitamins like in the form of grass-fed beef liver can help really shift those things. And then gut health. So gut health is going to really determine how we react to our environment. And so that can be something that can be worked on. And maybe the allergies won't completely go away, but people have definitely seen their allergies improve over time. What does it mean if a red dot appears on the skin? Is that bad? I don't know what you mean by like red dot. Like, is it a red dot after you eat? Is it a red dot after you're exposed to something? Do you just mean like a red dot, like a red dot? I'm not sure. How much magnesium is recommended for symptoms of anxiety? I don't say oh, this is recommended. I think 5 times your body weight in milligrams, unless you know you've been working on your magnesium levels for quite some time, is a really good way to base your magnesium intake off of. With high estrogen, should we try progesterone cream oil or first change the diet, etc., and then try the progesterone? My cycle is usually 46 days and painful. I think that's really up to you and what your intuition tells you. Some women do implement progesterone and they find that the symptoms are just too rough and they need to focus on the diet. But they just shelf it and then they just put it on pause for 2 months, work on their diet, continue to work on their diet, and then try it again. So I don't see a problem with doing that if you want to experiment with it. It's just kind of whatever you decide. And the worst thing that can happen is you experience symptoms and you just stop it. But I think it's you know where you're coming from and you know what's going on in your body better than I do. And so I think it's going to be different on a case-by-case basis and how you, what you feel is the right direction to go. But I don't think there's a right or wrong answer regarding that. I do find that people tend to react to progesterone better. When they implement it, sometimes they don't do really well on it, but then they get their blood sugar up, their diet better, and then they are like, oh my gosh, night and day difference. So that's just an observation I made, which is why I bring it to your guys' awareness a lot. But I don't think there's a right or wrong way to work on your body. My upper lip and leg hair have gotten much darker in the past couple of months. I'm guessing that it is estrogen related. Will they lighten again over time to previous color with balanced hormones? I can't say yes or no. I don't know if your body will respond that way. It is possible. There are people that have seen that change, but I don't know how your body specifically is going to respond. And I should say in addition, I do notice that my like the color, even the color and the texture, like the coarseness of like my leg hair, or even like my armpit hair, does change based on how stressed I am and how well I'm taking care of my body. So if my blood sugar's not balanced, I'm letting my blood sugar go crazy, I'm not sleeping well, I'm gonna see my leg hair get so much darker and coarser. But when I am taking care of myself, my progesterone levels are really good. I tend to have like much more soft and a lot lighter leg hair. So that's just something I have noticed for sure. Not about health, but do you like living in San Diego? Would you recommend California or no? I think the like the climate of it is so wonderful and I love the state, but there's a lot of negatives to it. Personally, I will eventually move out of state just because of the taxes and the infrastructure, the traffic. Like it's just, to me, it kind of like outweighs the benefits, which is like the weather is so wonderful and like the people are pretty good, but yeah, it's just like actually living here, like adulting here is very very difficult. Rent is very high. Cost of living is very expensive, so some people are like, I don't care, like that's my dream, and I'm like, more power to you. But to me, like, I don't love having to spend so much on rent and so much on water and electricity and so much on food that I could get for a much better price somewhere else and in a different environment, but a still beautiful environment. So that's kind of my honest take. I don't like hate it, but I think eventually living out of state is in the cards for me for sure. Feels weird to eat potatoes all the time, like it will ruin my heart or something. And my friends' families seem concerned, but it isn't fine if I eat with protein and fructose, right? Thank you. I eat potatoes all the time, like literally twice a day, because I love potatoes so much, and my heart is fine. So, but yeah, yeah. I mean, potatoes are not bad, you guys. People love to demonize foods, and I just don't understand. Like, people have literally been eating potatoes for thousands of years. They're one of the oldest like root vegetables we've had available to us. I've seen people take a daily shot of aloe. What is this beneficial for? A lot of people think it is like very nourishing to the digestive tract, which it is. It's like very mucusy. It can be a little bit on the estrogenic side. So if you're just like chugging aloe all the time, it can be like slightly estrogenic. But it is very anti-inflammatory and kind of soothing and cooling. And if you have a lot of irritation in the body, that can be very like anti-inflammatory. So I can see the benefit for sure. It's not something that I really do often anymore because for me, it just gives me like raging diarrhea, and I like, yeah, like I don't really want that. So I personally don't do a lot of aloe, but that doesn't mean it's bad. I just think people do it because it works really well for them. Is a raw carrot every day just as good as a raw carrot salad every day, or is the salad best? Salad's the best option, but again, it's always about doing something than not doing it at all. So a lot of people are like, well, I'm just going to do the raw carrot salad every day, but then they end up doing it like twice a week. And I'd rather you just eat a raw carrot every day rather than do the raw carrot salad twice a week. So raw carrot salad is best, but if you can't, then do raw carrot. How does Shilajit help the body? Do you feel it right away helping? Any good brands or dose? Yeah, Matt Blackburn's Panacea is probably the best. Sometimes when it's out of stock, I buy one called Himalayan Shilajit on Amazon. It's like $12, which is, his stuff is out of stock sometimes, like often. So when I can't get it, I will buy the one on Amazon. But yeah, I like Shilajit, and I do notice a difference. I recently started taking Panacea, and I do see a bigger difference with them like other brands, but I like Shilajit across the board. But yeah, it helps bind to metals, it helps bind to iron, and it really like neutralizes the effect of a lot of acids in the body, so it helps kind of like, remineralize. There's lots of trace minerals. It's a lot of like old animal and plant compounds that have, so the nutrients have kind of concentrated in the soil. But yeah, it is very, very powerful at helping detoxify, chelate iron, and help remineralize. It provides a lot of those trace minerals that we're kind of deficient in. But a lot of people see a huge amount of benefit. And I notice when I take it, I notice instantaneous results. Like if I'm very consistent with it, I feel like a completely different person. Very motivated. I'm very mentally clear. I have a lot of energy. Like it feels really good. It's one of those supplements that I personally see a huge benefit from taking. So that's something that it is a supplement that I really like, and I do point a lot of my clients towards it. How do you pre-prepare your carrot salad ahead of time? I will usually just pre-prepare the whole thing. So I'll just like shred 3 or 4 carrots. I'll do like a tablespoon or 2 of MCT oil or olive oil, a couple splashes of white vinegar and sea salt, and I just mix it all up, put it in a glass Tupperware, and keep it in the fridge, and I'll have like a portion of that. I think something might be wrong with my gut, like you said. I took probiotics for like 3 days and also got hives from that and constipation, diarrhea. How do I restore my gut? That's something that would take me, a long time to talk about. I don't know individually what's going on with you. I don't know what your history is. So really that would determine what the course of action is. You have to start somewhere. So I usually recommend starting with a raw carrot salad every single day. You can find the recipe on my feed and going from there. The raw carrot salad kind of gently kills bacteria and helps bind to estrogen in the gut and can be a really gentle way to start everything. Maybe doing some high dose gelatin, so taking some like Great Lakes gelatin and making some gummies out of it with like some fruit juice or something like that, and eating Jello or gummies every single day to kind of restore that mucosal barrier. But yeah, if you find that you're getting hives from something like taking NAC or spore-based probiotics, you probably have a lot more in-depth work to do, and that would be a lot more than just throwing a supplement at it. You'd probably need like a whole protocol and a strategic plan to do so. What are histamine symptoms? It can be like allergies, but it can also be like lots of redness, like your cheeks turn red when you eat certain things like cheese, wine. What else is high histamine? Sauerkraut, like anything fermented. Bone broth, collagen, those are all kind of like histamine-ish foods. Not everyone with high histamine reacts to all those foods. Some people just have like a problem with 1 or 2 of those foods. Shellfish tends to have high histamine. So those would be like you would react to foods like that, whether you just get digestive symptoms or you just feel really inflamed or you get like really, really red cheeks, or like say you like touch your neck really quick and then it just turns like bright red. Those are all like histamine-ish symptoms. Could you share your raw carrot salad recipe again, please? It is in my feed, you guys. Just scroll up. It's probably 2 weeks back. There's a picture of a raw carrot salad with the recipe. Are there common reasons for negative reactions to bioidentical progesterone, dizziness, foggy, lightheaded, like a drug feeling? Yes, so it could be too much too soon. Estrogen tends to move from the tissues, but yes, it is sometimes a mobilization of estrogen can be the reason. Also, taking too much can give you kind of that like druggish, like kind of like very lazy type feeling. So doing a lot less can sometimes be helpful, starting with 1 or 2 drops, or if you're doing the cream, very low dosages. So it's just really like playing with the dose and trying to figure out if it's the progesterone or if it's actually what the progesterone is helping mobilize, which is oftentimes estrogen. What water filter system do you use? I personally have an Aquasana, but if I was to do it again, I would probably get something different. I would opt for the Pristine Hydro or the Purifex water filters. I have like water filter lust over those. But I would wait. I'm waiting for my water filter system to need to be replaced before I would replace it with those. But yeah, if I was to do it again, I would probably get the Pristine Hydro. I keep seeing lots of new freckles popping up all over my skin. I live in the Midwest and don't get as much sunlight as I should. What causes this to happen? I have multiple skin biopsies at the derm. I would say lipofuscin. So if you haven't really looked into lipofuscin, I'm not like the expert. Matt Blackburn talks a lot about it. But it's pretty much like high amounts of iron, lots of polyunsaturated fats in the body, and they're oxidizing and causing that like oxidation. So it would be something you guys are familiar with, like liver spots or hyperpigmentation, but freckles are also a similar occurrence. I enjoy that you laughed at my potato question. Friends and fam just scared me, so I wanted to be sure. Yeah, friends and fam tend to scare a lot of my clients and my followers. They think they know what's best, and I'm like, what are they eating? Like, I was like, turn it around, like right back on them. Like, what are you eating? I may have missed this. Do you have a recipe for a raw carrot salad? Yes, it's on my post, one of my recent posts. Hi, Cassie. I just want to say hi. But it's just scroll a little bit down and I have a picture of literally like shredded carrots, and that's the raw carrot salad recipe. Just so you guys know, you can like go and reference it. I would definitely do the hour with you if you ever do offer that down the line. Keep us posted. Yeah, I will. Definitely will be shifting packages and shifting things according to demand. How much of Matt Blackburn's Shilajit do you take morning and night? When I take Shilajit, I usually take anywhere from 1 to 5 little tabs, just depending. With Matt's, his is really powerful, so I only need 1, and that's nice because it's more expensive. With the one that's the Himalayan Shilajit, I usually take 3 to 5 just because it's not as powerful. Will taking 100 grams of protein per day benefit mental health conditions such as depression and OCD? It's possible. It's important to do enough carbohydrates as well, though. With that protein, you don't just want to do the protein, especially with depression or OCD. You want to make sure you're getting enough carbohydrates. I continue to get acne no matter what I do. It doesn't seem to go away. Where do I start to figure out the problem? Usually liver health is the way to go with acne. Okay, just a pause on this. Instagram's shutting me down, so I'm going to end this and then I'm going to go live again and we'll continue our conversation. So see you in a second.